It's only 2 days removed from Franz Wagner's birthday, so we're going to give him a gift. What Franz Wagner has to do to become an all-star today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is August 28th. It will be August 29th, 2024. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to go over what Franz Wagner needs to do to become an NBA All-Star. Both the team things and the individual things. We'll talk about that. Plus, what might be the answer to his shooting woes? We'll get to that today on Locked On Magic. Before doing that, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Right or wrong, Franz Wagner is now a max player. And a max player comes with it certain responsibilities. It comes with it a certain expectation that you are a caliber of player above the normal player, that you are, at the very least, an all-star level player. Now, Franz Wagner, let's make this 100% clear, is an all-star level player already. He averaged 19.7 points per game, despite the bad three-point shooting, which we will get to. He had a crazy efficient season. All the advanced metrics love him. He is clearly the second best player on the Orlando Magic, at the very least, and certainly one of the Magic's most important players. While there is a lot to be said, and we will get to a lot of it here in a minute, while there is a lot to be said about Franz Wagner and some of his shortcomings and the things he needs to continue to get better at, there is also a lot to be said about how good Franz already is. So we're really talking today in Franz Wagner's quest to become an all-star about how Franz takes this next level up. Always a theme with the Magic. How he takes the next step up in his career. Now, look, he has played incredibly well. Last year, he averaged 19.7 points per game, 5.3 rebounds per game, and 3.7 assists per game, while shooting 48.2% overall. For most players, those are maybe not all-star numbers, sure thing, but very, very close. At the Olympics, he averaged 18.5 points per game and 5.8 rebounds per game. Again, those are 40-minute games, a little bit more physical. It certainly feels like Franz is on the cusp of making that big statement. Now, we will get to his shooting. I want to devote a whole segment to his shooting. He shot 28.1% from three last year. There's no getting around it. Big part of how he becomes an all-star. So, too, of course, is the Magic playing well. Teams don't get multiple all-stars without being one of the best teams in the league. Franz Wagner isn't necessarily a player that's going to demand, hey, I'm an all-star even on a losing team, in the way that Paolo Banchero might. And even Paolo Banchero probably can't get away with being on a losing team and being an all-star. But for Franz to be an all-star, he's going to have to play better. That will help the Magic play better. That'll get his ticket to the game. There's a path for Franz Wagner to be in San Francisco next February. But the place that we have to start is with the very basic thing. If Franz Wagner is going to be an all-star next year, it starts with him hitting that mythical 20-point per game threshold. It's not a sure thing to be in the all-star game if you average 20 points per game. But it is a key marker. It is a sign. It is a signal. It is a symbol that, you have cleared this benchmark, this hurdle. There were only 2 players on the Eastern Conference All-Star roster last year that failed to hit 20 points per game. That doesn't mean that every 20-point per game scorer gets in, but it's a lot easier if you're over that threshold. Like I said, Franz Wagner averaged 19.7 points per game last year. It's as close as the team has come to having two players on the roster averaging 20 points per game in the same season since Shaq and Penny last did it in 1996. Again, you're talking about great teams in Magic history, and we're going to put the Paolo Franz era into that group. We got the Dwight era, we got the Shaq era, we got the T-Mac era. We now have the Paolo and Franz era. In order for the Magic to get where they want to go, Paolo's going to have to get up above 25 points per game, a feat that only Shaq, I don't believe Penny ever did, a feat that only Shaq and T-Mac have ever done in Magic history. So again, we're talking Hall of Fame players here. Franz is going to have to get over that hurdle too, especially if the Magic improve their offense. But I want to make this really, really clear. Getting to that mark is not going to be difficult. Beyond Franz just getting better individually, which we expect, and frankly, we saw in the Olympics. I will put it out there. I think Franz Wagner gets his first career triple-double this year. Freezing cold takes, snapshot that. Keep it up. Franz Wagner will get a triple-double this season. I was a little bit off of my Paolo prediction they'd get a triple-double before a 40-point game, but only by about a month and a half. Franz Wagner, I think, has the capability to be a better decision-maker, a better playmaker, as well as an elite, not elite, but a really good scorer, a scorer that can average 20 points per game. But let me share with you how little it will take for Franz to get above that board. Assuming he keeps everything else flat, and he's one of the best scorers at the rim and one of the best drivers in the league. Maybe he gets a little bit more attention. Maybe those numbers drop down a little bit, but it's not going to take much. If Franz Wagner had shot his rookie year average of 35.4% from three last year, he would have averaged 20.1 points per game. He only has to get to 34% from three. He was at 28% last year. I don't think it's crazy to ask me 33% or even 32% from three. If he can get to that level, he is going to clear 20 points per game. He's going to hit this mythical level that he has to hit. Now, Franz still has a lot of work to do elsewhere. And again, we're going to talk a little bit more about the shooting here coming up in our next segment. But getting to 20 points per game obviously has such a huge impact. Whether you like it or not, and we talked about narratives last episode, whether you like it or not, a lot of the impressions of Franz Wagner right now are centered on his struggles in Game 7. Not fair, completely unfair. He is an all-star caliber player already. But all-star berths are about perception too. As much as the coaches try to take that out, and the coaches know more than we do as fans, they see what they see. They read what they read. And Franz Wagner, again, has been someone outside of the spotlight, someone who is not on center stage a lot. The Magic will play 4 of their 5 national TV games before the All-Star break. I believe they'll play 3 of their 5 before All-Star voting is completed. That means that Franz has several big stages to change and flip those narratives. Look, an All-Star berth is a team award as much as it is an individual award. Coaches know the players really well, but they don't have time to watch every game and understand every little thing that a player is doing. So they're going to watch the big games. They're going to look at the standings. If the Orlando Magic are sitting at 3rd in the Eastern Conference on January 31st, whenever coaches have to turn their ballots in, they'll give Paolo a spot in all likelihood. And very likely, they would give Franz a spot too, assuming there's no one that steals a bid because they're very popular with the fans. Team success is critical. And of course, team success is built on what Franz Wagner is doing. There's a lot for Franz to do if he wants to get to that all-star level. And again, 20 points per game is a benchmark. It's not the end-all be-all. But obviously, to get to 20 points per game, it's going to start with Franz Wagner making threes. And that is one of the big question marks. So what is at the bottom of this three-point shooting struggle? Do we have an answer? Well, Sam Vecini of Game Theory pitched an idea, and I looked into it. We'll talk about whether Franz Wagner is just a streaky shooter. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With more than 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home some huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic your first listen of the day. For your next listen, enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast. There is no offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed and entertained as Locked On NBA. It's available on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you listen to Locked On Fantasy Basketball in the preview that I did with Josh Lloyd of that podcast about a week ago now, definitely listen to that. Great conversation we had there. He asked a question that gets asked of me a lot, that has left a lot of us trying to just sit there and say, what is the deal? What is really going on? And that is a fair question to ask. That is a fair thing to say and a fair thing to wonder. We don't know. I've sat here and said, like, a lot of us have some working theories, but we don't know. Some people think it's fatigue from playing so much. And again, the FIBA World Cup ends a couple weeks before training camp. Eurobasket ended a couple weeks before training camp over the last 2 summers. The Olympics gave them 6 weeks off. So I don't think fatigue is necessarily the issue. There was at least some evidence that fatigue was maybe an issue, because when Franz Wagner missed 2 weeks with the ankle injury in January, he came back on fire and everything looked better. A lot of people have guessed or tried to say, well, actually, it's kind of a shooting form. It's a little bit of a flatter shot. He shoots it a little bit from his chin, kind of a low swooping angle, rather than a high arc. Maybe that's the reason why. And there might be something to that. But again, he shot 35, 36% in his first 2 years. It doesn't explain quite why his 3-point field goal percentage dipped below 30%. It was a bad shooting year for Franz Wagner. No getting around it, no changing it, no debating it. It was bad. Even Franz would say it was bad. My bigger concern was that he looked uncomfortable shooting at times. He looked hesitant to shoot at times, which you can't be. You got to be confident in your shot. You got to keep shooting. I'd rather have a guy who will continue to shoot rather than one who is afraid to shoot. If you're afraid to shoot, you've already lost. Game is over. We're done. That is all part of the equation. That is all part of the issue with Franz Wagner. But Sam Vecenie of Game 3, and they just completed their 40 top 24 under 24 for 2024. Top 24 players under 24 years old, and ranked Franz Wagner. I believe they ranked him number 12. So he's pretty high up there. He's in the all-star tier. He's someone that he and his co-host on the show agreed would be an all-star. The Vecenie's been watching Franz Wagner for a while, even dating back to Michigan, probably a little bit before that. And he said even at Michigan, he was kind of a streaky shooter, where he'd have these periods of 5-6 games where he shot the lights out, and then periods where he didn't shoot so well. I heard that and I was like, that's not necessarily something that I had considered before, let me go take a look at this. Like I mentioned, there were long stretches even this season where Wagner shot the ball effectively, and in long stretches where he quite simply didn't. But here are the numbers. I'm going to try and make this as concise as possible. In his sophomore year at Michigan, his last year at Michigan, he shot 26.3% in his first 7 games, 43.6% in his next 11, and then 29.5% in his final 10 games this season, including that infamous 1 for 10 3-point showing, 1 for 3.1 for 10 shooting overall showing in an NCAA tournament loss to UCLA. There are some concerning trends there, but again, Franz showed up in game 6. I don't want to belabor that point too much. That was his last year in college. So again, you can see some pretty solid trend lines there. And look, I fully acknowledge I'm kind of splitting these up where I felt like it made sense to kind of drive my point home. But I think if you looked at the total wave of that graph, you'd see clear drop-off points and clear rising points where the numbers stay pretty consistent and then suddenly drop off. In Franz's rookie year, he shot 46.3% from 3 in his first 8 games, 25.5% over his next 14 games, 58.8% in his next 6, 15.8% in his next 6 after that, then 39.3% in his next 10, 12.5% in his next 5, 45.7% in his next 12, 32.4% in his next 9, and then 33.3% in his final 10 games of the season. Again, new 3-point line. You expect some ups and downs as you learn those things, but kind of happened again his sophomore year. 23.1% in his first 13 games, 42.9% in his next 16, 34.1% in his next 8, 44.6% in his next 13, 36.2% in his next 15, and closed the season his final 15 games of the 2023 season at 31.7%. Again, you find a similar pattern last year, although he never really hits the highs of those first 2 seasons. Wagner started last year shooting 29.2% in his first 13 games. Over the next 9, he shot 36.8%. We all thought he was coming out of it. Then in the next 12, he shot 22.6%. Had the ankle injury, came back in his next 11 games, and shot 40% from the floor. We all thought he was out of it. That's when we all thought, oh, it was fatigue. Couple weeks off his feet, couple weeks not playing games, relaxing, resetting the brain, set him up right. And then over the final 27 games of the season, he shot 18.8%. And like I said, maybe I cherry-picked some of those numbers. Maybe I split things up to make this point. As Mark Twain always said, there's lies, there's danged lies, and there's statistics. But I think there's a real pattern here that maybe Franz is just kind of streaky. Sometimes that shot is on and sometimes it is not. Now, to me, the problem is if you could have crests and troughs. You can go up and down, and that's fine. That's part of the league. 82 games is a long time. Everyone's going to have bad stretches in an 82-game season. The problem is you don't want those troughs. You don't want those dips to be as low. And what happened last year was the highs were not as high or as high for as long, and the lows were much lower and for much longer than they were in his first 2 seasons. Does this information help Franz become a better shooter? Probably not. He's got work to do in that arena, and a lot of it's just going to come down to confidence and rhythm. Can he find the rhythm to make shots again? And can he maintain that rhythm for longer? That's going to be the ultimate question. And so I don't know what the answer to that is. I'm expecting Franz to shoot 32 or 33% from 3. I don't, if he dips down to 20, if he stays under 30, that's back, and that'd be back-to-back years under 30. That's going to be trouble. But it's going to take multiple years for Franz to recover his shooting. And again, next summer, he will have Eurobasket. He will not get a summer off until 2026. 2027 is the World Cup again. 2028 is the Olympics in Los Angeles. So it's going to take a while for him to fully recover. And if it really is a fatigue thing, we're going to have to wait. The Magic are in the Franz Wagner business, though. He is not going anywhere. He is a key part of this team. And so they will be patient for him to figure this out. They will ride those highs as much as they can. That's going to be absolutely key. And the Magic are going to get as much out of it as they can. But we're going to have to ride those highs and lows. The reality might be that even at his best, Franz Wagner is not a knockdown, reliable three-point shooter. That he is, quote unquote, streaky. That he's going to have games where he makes 4 of 6 or 5 of 8 or whatever the case may be and looks unstoppable from 3. And it's on the Magic to put him in positions where he gets quality three-point shots and for him to be confident to hit a step back 3 or to take a step back 3 or to take that shot when the ball rotates to him. To have confidence that it's going to go in. But the reality might be that we're going to have to suffer through some long droughts with Franz Wagner. And that leads us back to what Franz Wagner needs to do to get into the All-Star game. Because if he's not going to be a reliable three-point shooter, he's going to have to do more. We'll talk about how Franz Wagner builds off his strengths coming up here in just a moment. So if Franz Wagner is not going to be a knockdown three-point shooter, he's going to be streaky. He's going to miss his fair share of threes. He's going to have stretches where he's not a great three-point shooter. Now, I would argue, and I've argued to a million people about this, despite the three-point dip, Franz Wagner was as good as ever last year. He had the best, worst season imaginable in history because he improved across the board. He rebounded better. He assisted better. He shot better at the rim. He did all of these things. And watching his Olympics, while I think we were all frustrated by him shooting 7 for 35 from 3, which is not good, 20% is worse. He had some good three-point shooting games in there, by the way. Smaller sample size. I'm not going to freak out. But again, streaky. Had about a 6-game stretch. Whatever. Franz got better at all the things he's already good at. Like he was more physical. He was getting downhill better. He was absorbing contact better. He was finishing through contact better. He was really good all throughout the Olympics in ways that should have Magic fans very, very excited. The fact of the matter is Franz Wagner is one of the elite drivers in the game. And for him to become an all-star, he has to diversify his attack on his drives. He has to remain an elite driver because that's what will get him above 20 points per game. But he has to be a threat as a passer and playmaker. He has to do more to put pressure on defenses and get that recognition and notice. Here are your numbers to help set the table. Last year, Wagner averaged 11.6 drives per game according to Second Spectrum. He shot 53.6% of his drives, scoring 8.6 points per game. That is a team high and 20th overall in the league. I want to repeat that. According to Second Spectrum, on drives, that's when you go from at least 20 feet to the rim to 10 feet to the rim, Franz Wagner scored 8.6 points per game. That is 20th in the league. He is one of the best drivers in the league, very, very quiet. In addition, he made 67.5% of his shots in the restricted area. So he was an elite finisher at the basket all season long. 67.5% is very, very good, especially for a non-center. But he's going to have to expand his game. He's going to have to continue to be more of a threat because teams know the way you stop Franz Wagner is keep him from the basket. He averaged only 1 assist per game off those numerous drives. Not a great passer off those drives, not setting others up. He's looking to score. And on the precious few mid-range jumpers that he took, just 47 total attempts, he made 34%. If there was something encouraging to come out of the Olympics, he looked like he was taking a few more mid-range jumpers or willing to take some mid-range jumpers. But at the end of the day, this is about keeping defenses off balance. Wagner is a bit one-dimensional. And if he's not going to have a three-point shot, he's got to be an elite driver. He's got to be an elite playmaker off those drives. He has to be able to keep defenses honest by hitting a mid-range jumper or two. I've actually kind of taken to comparing Franz Wagner to Dwayne Wade. And again, Dwayne Wade's a better player. Not going to sit here and debate that. But Dwayne Wade could not shoot threes for most of his career. Was not a great three-point shooter at all. Not even really looking to shoot threes. He was a driver through and through. That fall down 7, get up 8, that's because Wade was throwing his body at the rim, trying to get to the basket by all means necessary. But the way he kept defenses off balance was, unlike Franz Wagner, Dwayne Wade was an elite mid-range jump shooter. Dwayne Wade had that in his bag where he could hit that turnaround fade away from the baseline from like 15 feet. Then he could stop at the elbow on a dime and hit a jumper, but the defense so scared of his drive falling, frankly, out of bounds toward the basket in positions where they could not stop him. This is the point that Franz Wagner has to get to. Look, the Magic are going to play by committee. They're not going to have a guy who's going to get 7, 8, 9 assists. That's not who they are. Franz Wagner was second on the team last year with 3.7 assists per game. We all think that Paolo Banchero is going to have to up his assists. Jalen Suggs will have to up his assists as the point guard. But Franz Wagner is going to play this point guard role too. He's going to have the ball in his hands a lot, and he's going to have to make decisions. You want to get noticed by the coaches. You want to get to the All-Star game. Yes, you got to score a little bit more. But you've got to diversify your game too. You've got to be able to free guys up, to make passes, to make plays that help your teammates better. And on top of that, rebounding a little bit better, which I thought he did really, really well at the Olympics, that would go a long way too. Franz Wagner has a lot of the skills to be a really diverse player. I'll sit here and continue to argue this. I think Franz Wagner has all defensive team potential too. So on top of all these great offensive things, Franz being an elite defender on top of the other elite defenders the Magic have, because Jalen Suggs, Jonathan Isaac, and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope are all going for a spot on the all-defensive team. I think Franz Wagner is, if not at their level, a notch below. Not very far off. I think Franz Wagner can be an elite defender in this league. All those things are things coaches like that will get him on the all-star radar. The bottom line is this. If the Magic want Franz Wagner to be an all-star, they got to win games. They got to be competing for home court advantage in the Eastern Conference. They've got to make that impression very, very early in the season that they are a team to be reckoned with, that they are a team that is very serious about competing. That's how you get 2 all-stars on the team. Because, look, there are players on teams that are going to be outside the playoffs that will push for all-star bids too. Could be Scotty Barnes again. Could be Cade Cunningham, who's really good, by the way, when he's healthy. Could be LaMelo Ball. There are going to be a lot of players who are fighting for their spot among the playoff teams. Darius Garland will probably be fighting for a spot. Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen will be fighting for a spot. I'm going down my list. Paul George enters the fray now. Could be fighting for even a starter spot. Julius Randle will be healthy. You may not have the same injury replacement issues that you had last year. Paolo is going to get his spot. Franz Wagner has to break his way in. And the way he's going to do that is by helping his team win. And the way he's going to help his team win is scoring a little bit more, making a few more threes, and then diversifying his game. Being a threat, not just as a driver, but as a playmaker, as a potential mid-range shooter. We don't yet quite know what Franz is really adding to his game. Again, we saw he'll get to the line a little bit more. He'll rebound a little bit better. He'll be a little bit better of a decision maker. We saw all that during the Olympics. But we'll see how it all comes together when he joins the Magic again in a couple weeks. But Franz Wagner has a lot of potential and a lot more that he can add to this team and elevate their profile once again. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all of them on podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For even more, for the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can, of course, follow us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. I do have a survey up right now for non-subscribers. So if you're interested on what I have to offer on my Patreon page, or you have ideas for what I should offer for a subscription service, please check out my Patreon page, patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. Fill out the survey. It's pinned to my profile at PhilipRR_OMD as well. Check that out today. Let me know what you think, and I will do my best to provide that for you and give you a good Magic community to be a part of. Now that you're done listening to me, though, be sure to check out the Locked On NBA podcast, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. You can find the link to Locked On NBA in the description, so you don't need to search. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's going to do it for me today for Locked On Magic. We'll be back probably again next week to talk more Orlando Magic. Have a great weekend. Have a great Labor Day weekend. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.